Hello everyone and welcome to this Mobile World Live webinar. I'm Kabit Majithia, Senior Editor of Mobile World Live, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's event. Over the next hour or so, we are going to be exploring the topic of critical IoT challenges and how to tackle them, as the use of IoT for business operations continues to develop rapidly. Before we start, we'd like to gauge an idea of how seasoned our audience is in IoT projects. So please take a second to fill out our poll question, which you'll see on your screens now. Thanks. To explain this topic in greater detail, I'm delighted to be joined by 4 speakers today. First, we have Robin Duke-Woolley, Analyst and CEO at Beecham Research. Hi, Robin.
Hi, good to be here.
Great. Second, we have Martino Turcato. Martino is Product Manager at Telit, heading up management for the company's software and integrated services offering. Hi, Martino.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Third, we are joined by Maurice van Giezen, Partner at Cleantron. Maurice co-founded Cleantron in 2012, a Dutch company specialized in the design and production of lithium-ion battery packs. Hey, Maurice.
Hi, everybody.
And last but not least, we have Jim Wirt. Jim has been Telit CEO since 2019 and has been active in standards across multiple industries since 2005. Hey, Jim.
Hello, everybody.
So just before I hand over to Robin to start the presentation, a few words on Telit. Telit is a global leader in IoT enablement with an extensive portfolio of wireless connectivity modules, platforms, and services. Now, while our speakers are presenting, I'd like to encourage our audience to interact by posting comments and questions. We'll have time at the end of the presentation to address some of those questions. Simply submit a question in the box underneath the slides and we will try to answer it. As mentioned, the use of IoT in business operations continues to increase. However, IoT projects have multiple elements that need to work together to be successful. But this makes them more complex. 3/4 of all IoT projects will not be considered successful by organizations using them. This webinar will see our 4 experts discuss the findings of the latest analyst report by Beecham Research, aptly titled Why IoT Projects Fail. We will start with a synopsis of the report, followed by a look at how Telit can help enterprises solve the most common challenges. We then have a Cleantron case study on connected battery remote monitoring, and finally, a look at the first mile of IoT. And with that, Robin, it's over to you.
Great, thanks very much. On to my first slide. How successful is IoT? Well, IoT's been around for quite a while, and M2M before that, and Beecham Research has been studying this marketplace for almost 20 years. Makes me feel very old. And it's an opportunity to take stock of how things are going. It's generally acknowledged that IoT has enormous potential in the enterprise and with product manufacturers and everywhere. A lot has been written about it. The evidence of IoT projects is a bit mixed as to what their success has been. There have been many successes, clearly, and I'm sure we can all point to IoT projects that have been successful. I certainly can. But also there have been quite a few that are considered to be unsuccessful, particularly by the companies that started them and created them and moved them on. And that's a great concern to the IoT community, as there's a lot of investment going into IoT now, and there will be more in the future. I think a lot of people consider IoT to be a critical area for investment in the future. So this is an opportunity to learn from what's gone on so far, and perhaps to draw some conclusions and move on and make things more successful in the future. So as part of this, Beecham Research created a report, Why IoT Projects Fail and What to Do About Them. We were sponsored with 11 sponsors. Telit was one of the sponsors. And this is a 100-page report that is full of research, of our own research and also secondary research that we gained from other people. So we conducted our own online survey, and I'll go through some of the results of that shortly. And then we did interviews with solution providers and experts in the field, and also with end users as well. So we did a fairly broad research exercise over several months to find out a bit more about what's going on in the industry and what the challenges are and so forth. So we think it's pretty essential reading for IoT users. It's a free download at whyiotprojectsfail.com. So if you haven't downloaded it already, here's your opportunity to do so. And I'm sure that you'll learn quite a lot from it. At least I hope you will, because that's certainly the intention. So just to summarize where we got to with that, the online survey showed to the question, how successful was your IoT project? Only 12% said that their project had been fully successful. Now, this was a survey of 25,000 enterprise users that we approached. Not all of them responded, but we got a fairly good response. And so 12% fully successful, a further 30% mostly successful, but not entirely successful, and then 40% mostly unsuccessful, and then a further 18% not successful at all. So from that, one can gauge that the majority of the projects were considered to be unsuccessful, and only 12% were considered to be fully successful. So I think that's an important reading in its own right, that it shows that this is certainly something that we should be looking at and delving a bit deeper into. So moving on to the next slide gives us a bit more detail, and this is taken, as I say, from the online survey that we did, not from the individual interviews. Some of the individual interviews, which are written up in the report, and you can read them at your leisure, actually go into quite a lot of detail as to what was going wrong, and in particular areas. We did find most people are prepared to talk about successes. Less people are prepared to talk about failures, and that's sort of a natural sort of human thing. But nevertheless, we did get some very good interviews with senior executives who were prepared to talk about the lack of success of particular projects, and there's a lot to learn from those. So I would recommend that those of you who haven't read the report should do so. And then, so these charts here are taken from the respondents of the survey who consider their projects to be unsuccessful rather than successful. So we split them out into the successful ones. We asked those a set of questions, and then we talked to those people or had questions for those people who consider their projects to be unsuccessful, and we asked them slightly different questions. So for the unsuccessful projects, the very important objectives that they had to start out with was reducing costs, improving productivity, enabling new business models, safety and security was also usually a pretty high priority, but we would reckon that that's not particularly a subject that initiates a project. It's more the other ones that would tend to initiate projects. So, reducing costs, improving productivity, enabling new business models would be what people think are the sort of things that they should be aspiring to when they get into an IoT project. But then when you look at to what extent were they achieved, did they actually get success on, it's not terribly good. So fully achieved score was very low. Not at all achieved score was much too high. Enabling new business models was particularly poor. And enabling new business models, like, for example, moving from a product offering where you're just selling a product to selling a service, a managed service, say, in the marketplace, is a remarkably complex thing to do in practice. It's not a simple exercise at all. So when people approach the idea of doing that, they may have a fairly simplistic view about what needs to be done within the organization to actually achieve that. And then they get into the detail of it and find that it's really quite complex. And that causes, I think, quite a lot of people to have second thoughts. And those things need to be taken in stages. They need to be prepared for. There's all sorts of companies that have been hugely successful in that transition. And they've gone on to future success afterwards. But it's not something to be taken lightly, that's for sure. The slide jumped. So user interviews, as I said earlier, has helped to get more detail, and I would recommend looking at that in a bit more detail. And then the last point here is not enough focus on the solution details. I'll talk about that in very, very shortly. But what I mean by that is planning the solution details, often things like connectivity and also the data elements and what you're going to do with the data elements has often not been planned in sufficient detail. So the last slide of the set is looking at a particular area, which is was your IoT project developed and implemented using in-house only resources or external solution provider resources, or a mix of the two. And what we found with that, comparing the two samples, the ones that considered their projects to be successful compared with those that considered them to be unsuccessful, there was a much greater weight of mixing the two together for those projects that were considered to be successful. So finding a way of bringing a project team together that brings together both internal resources and external resources together in a mix where the expertise of the internal knowledge of processes and what's going on and what's acceptable within the organization and so forth on the one hand from the internal team, and then the external team with perhaps more rounded expertise and experience of IoT projects in general, and what's likely to work and what's not likely to work and things like that. So that coming from an external source, mixing those two together turned out to be the best way of putting it together. Surprisingly, a lot of the unsuccessful projects tended to rely much too much on in-house resources, and that's, we think, was a bit of a problem. So then moving on to some key points arising from this. Many IoT adopters are unclear that what they want from IoT. As a result, many are wasting time, energy, and resources on projects that will ultimately be unsuccessful. The business aims are often not thought through, with unclear business objectives, desire to be seen as embracing new technology to keep up with trends, perhaps, or advised must invest to survive. So they have an overall idea that it's important to invest in IoT, but when it comes down to the detail, perhaps not too sure about what to do next. And it's quite easy to lose track of what's important and what's not important, and that seems to happen quite often. Many, it appears, are spending resource and time and money on data analytics without a clear reason why. They've been given the impression that data analytics is like a silver bullet, and so long as you get into data analytics and you've got lots of data analytics resource involved and doing things, that you're going to get out of it what you want. The thing I would say to that is that if you don't have the right data going into the data analytics in the first place, you're not going to get the right result out of it. So it's more a question of making sure that you get the right data in the first place, and that is more of a strategy type of issue. It's not just leaving it to a data analytics data scientist to get it right. You have to start with going in the right direction in the first place. And then there's company organization issues. Different markets, different mindsets between different business units. I think we've all been there where one business unit or one department has one view and a different department has a different view. Integrating new and legacy working practices can often be difficult, and then integrating project teams together as well. So one of the things that I wanted to pick out was technology problems not foreseen. In particular, for example, complexity of connectivity elements is not always understood. It's not just a simple plug and play when it comes to wireless networks. So there's much more planning that is needed. And I've said before in other events that connectivity has been or is considered by some to be a bit of a commodity thing. It's a sort of last-minute thing that you do everything else and then you come back and you consider the connectivity and then slot that in. And that's a fatal mistake because connectivity is complex. It's becoming more complex rather than less complex. It's certainly not a commodity. So those people that would like to leave connectivity and sorting that out and planning their strategy on connectivity until the last minute are almost certainly going to fail. So I would certainly recommend that connectivity be considered as an area of that requires a great deal of planning up front, right at the start of the project, because otherwise you don't know that you're going to get the right coverage, you don't know you get the right reliability, the bandwidth, the latency, and everything else that goes with that. So one of the key areas. And then another one, as I mentioned, is the data strategy and making sure that you're actually getting data out of it that you want and is going to be valuable for the business outcomes that are important to the business. And then there are customer vendor issues, as I mentioned earlier, sort of in-house versus out-house or outsource or external supply using external solution providers. Guidance on feasibility versus return on investment, getting expectations right due to market hype and so forth. So these are all the issues that need to be considered in considering a successful project. So again, I would recommend reading the report. It's free, download for free, and see what you think of that. Now I'm going to hand over to our next speaker, Martino, who's going to take us a little bit deeper into a particular area of success. So over to you, Martino. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So yes, I'm going to give you my presentation an overview of the challenges that our customers face and how Telit can help them succeed. So today, the shift to become a digital business is driving all the enterprises, and Telit plays an important role in helping this transformation. We have been in this space for more than 20 years now, and being a company with a highly diversified offering allows us to approach the industry from multiple angles and multiple clients, whether they are building consumer goods, tracking devices, smart meters, security systems, industrial IoT, etc. So we have many different technologies for supporting our customers in their projects. which include the hardware modules to help them connect wirelessly their devices. And on top of the hardware, we have our software and the services and the global connectivity business. So being part of this movement gives us a deep view of the IoT market, which is evolving with disruptive technologies that we are contributing to build, to define, and of course introduce in our product. So our customers today are demanding more advanced and mature solutions. And so there's a need for more intelligence on the edge. The solutions we provide must be easy to integrate, but also robust. And also the transition to technologies like Cat-M or Survey-IoT or 5G is another important trend. Security also is another key aspect in IoT. And also a deeper integration with business processes is one of the most critical aspects for our customers. When we focused on our customers' challenges to define our portfolio strategy, we essentially looked at three main areas. Ease of integration and time to market is the first. So IoT brings many possibilities for a company to become more efficient, to reduce costs, to create new opportunities or new revenue streams. But customers have learned over time that bringing a solution to life is way more complex than they expected. So whether they are creating a new service or evolving an existing solution, they need components that allow them to easily integrate their solutions, taking advantage of new technologies, being able to implement new use cases. But at the same time, they need to reduce the learning curve and the time to market. Next is the total cost of ownership. In IoT, we need to consider not only the cost for initial investment, but also the operating costs associated to running and maintaining a service over a life cycle that is typically of many years. And this takes us to the other challenge, which is related to making a solution scalable and sustainable over time. Thanks to a proper implementation of various aspects like onboarding, remote management, remote troubleshooting. We will discuss later about the importance of device management. Now, looking more in detail at some specific customer pain points and solutions, we can have an insight on the functions that must be included in the solution framework. One of the major issues is certainly moving from the POC phase to the deployment phase. This requires costly and complex processes, which are not an evident issue when you start small. But then without that strategy in place, it is difficult to scale. So once the solution is deployed, also you have to maintain it, and this becomes a prohibitive task without the proper tools in place. You need to guarantee QoS of the service. You need to reduce downtime or inefficiencies and lower the operational costs. This is where functions like zero-touch onboarding or device management can make the difference. As Robin was saying, cellular connectivity is great, but can be complex to manage. Even those our customers that are supposed to be experts sometimes are failing and struggling in correctly managing the cellular connection. And when it comes to the logistics of cellular, we all know the complexity inherent to handling SIMs, data plans, and associated them to devices. So solutions like integrated UICC or software components like the Smart Connection Agent can simplify this task. Security is another major concern in IoT. There's a huge number of examples where IoT products and services have been hacked pretty easily. Especially identity of physical assets is critical to trust the information being sent from the edge. And finally, integration into business processes and enterprise system is another key aspect, but also very difficult and expensive. So this leads us to introducing the concept of the first mile. So to use a metaphor we are all familiar with, in the space of telecommunications and internet connectivity, bridging the last mile usually means linking a cable from the curb to the customer premises, making a final connection to send the data and the contents from a central server to the edge. But in the world of IoT, that logic must be reversed. So IoT actually starts with the edge and the data generated at the edge. So there is little value unless the data can be read by the analytics platform. And the hardest thing usually is to get that device to talk to the platform. So in IoT, we have many platforms and IT companies. Some of them are very big names, and they position themselves as IoT leader, and actually they are. But they primarily deal with large-scale data management, analytics components, applications, and still have challenges to get to those edge devices and get them integrated in their systems. They still need partners and integrators to help them take advantage of those data. And this is basically the mission that we have embraced at Telit, helping companies crossing this first mile, simplifying remote management, connectivity, data collection and delivery to the enterprise application in an efficient and meaningful way. So in this diagram, we can see the different technology areas that the solution is comprised of. I'm giving you just a very high-level overview since Tim is going to further talk about that. But on the left-hand side, we have the edge hardware, where the sensors and the actuators and the devices are using the network capabilities of a wireless module or a gateway to connect it to a cellular wireless connection, which is usually globally available, to exchange their data. And further to that, data is processed by the middleware and the platform, so the software and the cloud, where we provide also device management and connectivity management functions and cloud connectors to the final stage, which is the enterprise system, where data that has been processed, integrated, analyzed, are used to power analytics and applications. So the main concept in this slide is that with an integrated solution, we can start shifting the paradigm from a make approach, where a solution designer has to take various components from one vendor or multiple vendors, make sense of those components, and take care of the development and the integration, to a buy and configure scenario, where all the components come pre-integrated, and the main effort is to configure those components and extend them where needed. So this circle is representing the framework that we use to describe our integrated offering under the brand name of OneEdge. But it's also a good and comprehensive representation of the aspects that a customer usually must deal with when designing an end-to-end solution based on cellular technology. So this system is a combination of hardware components and a software suite with integrated services and tools to simplify the deployment and the management of an IoT solution. And these 5 pillars of OneEdge are the device management, which relates to the installation and configuration, the remote management, monitoring, troubleshooting, and software updates. Edge logic, which includes functions and tools to program the behavior of the device, manage the the local peripherals, sending and receiving data to the server, taking local actions, or simplifying some activities like managing and maintaining the cellular connection. So this piece is critical to make the solution work and to make the solution efficient. So, for example, if you are monitoring the temperature of an industrial environment, you want your device to use efficiently your uplink and not waste data. So sending this temperature only when it changes, when it crosses an alarm threshold, for example, and not every few seconds. Especially in the context of new low-power cellular technologies, it's important to use standard-based and efficient protocols to optimize the data channel and the power consumption and adapt to those use cases where the device is not communicating most of the time. I'm referring in particular to lightweight M2M, which is the centerpiece protocol and technology in our solution and is gaining an increasing footprint in the market. I'm also thinking about some interesting customer use cases that we have showcased recently, like a gas tank monitoring device, which is reporting the tank level a few times a week, and then go to sleep so that the device can last on a battery for many years. Or a rodent trap, which is supposed to contact the server very infrequently, essentially when it gets activated by an event, and from time to time it just reports general status. Security is related to end-to-end encryption from device to transport to cloud. But another important aspect in OneEdge is the pre-provisioning and personalization and manufacturing time of the hardware, which allows to simplify initial installation and onboarding without exposing security assets and avoiding manual configuration of devices and IT systems. Cellular connectivity includes the integrated SIM and the connectivity management service on the portal. To give you another example, device identification and integrated SIM feature allowed one of our customers to build a glucose meter system and securely and easily associate the medical device to the correct patient and avoid mistakes or undesired changes to the configuration. And the next and final item is the enterprise integration, which includes the tools needed to facilitate integration with the enterprise system. I would like to conclude my part emphasizing again the importance of device management in the context of an IoT solution. Since in many cases, these aspects are neglected and become an afterthought. DM is fulfilling essential requirements which are not specific to some applications. They are valid for all IoT applications, since DM has to do with the control plane of the solution. So connection configuration, connection status, cellular reception, network counters, statistics, battery level, and other operating parameters, just to give you a few examples. And device management is also a key factor to sustainability and scalability. It's essential to guarantee the quality of service in a solution. Also helping out with monitoring and troubleshooting functions. This means that we can reduce truck rolls and the engineer has no longer to fly on site to fix equipment, but in many cases can see the diagnostic information and handle the maintenance remotely. An important piece of device management is over-the-air software updates that allow to keep your device current with up-to-date software and security updates, which are essential in a fast-evolving environment and communication network technologies. Basically, all aspects that are going back to the initial considerations of TCO and how critical it is to reduce the cost of operating a solution. So with that, I have concluded my presentation, and then we go over to Maurice that will illustrate a compelling use case from Cleantron and some of these and how they use some of the technologies that I have just presented.
Okay, thank you. This is Maurice van Giesen speaking. Hello, everybody. Director of Cleantron. We are located in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and we are having our first experiences with Telit IoT. Before starting to explain the IoT solution from Telit for Cleantron, I have to explain you a little bit about the batteries that we are producing. We are a specialist producer, and we are developing and engineering and producing in our new factory here in Amsterdam lithium-ion batteries. And we are doing that for a variation of market sectors like the industry, agricultural applications, light electric vehicles, and automotive applications. And at the moment we have developed and have in production a very advanced battery module. This is a 48-volt module, and it is very advanced. It is basically a little computer. In every battery there are lithium-ion cells, and these lithium-ion cells are offering information because we have implemented advanced sensing technologies, and this sensing technology is basically offering the information to the battery management system, the little computer inside the module. And then on its own, the battery management system using that information to communicate with the outside world, which could be a vehicle, which could be also a charger. But in our case, we also have developed a situation where the module is talking to another module. So in other words, the modules are talking to each other, and that opens the opportunity to have a real modular system. In other words, battery modules working together in a system, and that can be scaled from small to big dependent upon the amount of modules that you implement in a particular application. So in a way, it's a very democratic system because every module talks to the other, and they communicate about how they feel and what they do. That that degree of modularity is very important and has a great benefit. We call it the multi-pack configuration, and the multi-pack configuration means basically that there is intelligence in the battery that is managing the different behavior of the different battery modules. Because battery modules are like humans, we are all for 99.9% identical, but we are all different behaving. And because of that different behavior, these changes and these differences need to be managed. The multi-pack configuration firmware, which we have developed, is doing so. And it opens the opportunity to use the battery modularity for functional advantages like, for instance, easy battery swapping, quick exchange of batteries inside a vehicle or apparatus. If you do that, then it is important if you have, for instance, two batteries working together in one vehicle, that the first battery is empty before the second starts, because that opens the opportunity to exchange the empty one, and to replace that with a full one while the second one is still in process. That opens also the opportunity to use a bit different battery packs in parallel to have just bigger capacity. That means that the vehicles are using a power bank, using different modules together that are intercommunicating, and this allows higher capacities, higher discharge currents, for instance, for peak powers, for acceleration or range. This explains why there is so much communication ongoing, and in order to do it safely, and in a sustainable way, there's a vast amount of information floating backwards and forwards in between the modules and between the module system and the vehicle. That on its own deserves a monitoring system. A monitoring system that is registering all the things that you want to know. So that could be the state of charge, so what is the remaining capacity, the state of health, so how is the battery doing, so what is the residual lifetime, the temperature, all these kind of parameters. Those aspects are monitored by the monitoring system for each battery module, but the system can also look at the state of function, the SOF of the whole system, of the whole MPC system. And finally, it's therefore very useful because it can also identify and point out any modules that are behaving badly and maybe need some attention, education, or maintenance. Having said that, this all happens within a vehicle, within an application, and there are a certain amount of applications where there is a clear advantage to have access to all this information, all this management information remotely. So that means that the monitoring system is basically making the parameters available to a telematic module, and with the Telit platform making it available to, for instance, a fleet owner. And that opens a lot of possibilities and creates a lot of value in the marketplace. It helps fleet owners to monitoring the fleet of, for instance, their AGVs in the car factories or in the warehouses. Cleantron supplies a lot of batteries for internet warehouse systems, for instance. And it's extremely important to monitor all these AGVs that are floating around in the warehouse, on the factory floor. But it could also be used, for instance, in rental systems for vehicles, for electric scooters, for instance, in free-floating rental systems where the vehicles are everywhere, basically, and you want to know where they are, how the battery is doing. The OneEdge platform of Telit was basically very suitable for doing so. We were able to make a thing, on this platform that has exactly the same parameters as our BMS is producing. And by doing so, it is capable of making those parameters available to the fleet owner. Alongside the fleet owner management, this is also very interesting for research and development applications, particularly in automotive sector, for instance, live data acquisition. So how is the battery doing at a certain temperature, at a certain humidity, on a certain altitude? These are the things everybody always wanted to know and is now made available. Thanks for this. And finally, it opens also a clear opportunity for a service model where on a distance service can be applied, a diagnosis can be made, uploads can be done, firmware uploads can be done to improve even during its lifetime. So it opens some vast opportunity and benefits of the application of batteries. And if we look back on our collaboration with Telit, our engineering department was very pleased to work with them because they gave good feedback on the schematics, on the PCB layouts, and support on protocol issues. And there are also frequent portal feature updates, which is also a great help. From an operational point of view, being a Dutch company with currently still a focus on the European markets, it's great to have let's say one modem or single SIM for complete European coverage. So from that point of view, although this is our first stepping stone in the direction of IoT, we were very pleased to work with the Telit One Edge platform. Well, that completes my my little story about IoT and batteries. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so I think it's on to me and talking about the first mile, and you know, I think we had some good discussions and good presentations that's always hard to follow and bring up the rear. I wanted to talk about that first mile and really trying to help customers focus on what's valuable to their company. So, you know, it's an interesting space we operate in. This first mile, getting your device to talk with whatever application you have in the cloud, is one of those areas where almost anybody out there who has software experience can pick up some free toolkit, something from Amazon, something from Microsoft, something from any of the players, and getting your device to do that first little chirp from the edge to the cloud is super easy. But the difference between a proof of concept and a prototype in production is very, very different. And, you know, this is where our focus is on trying to collapse out this connectivity layer, how to get your devices talking with your applications so that you can focus on what drives business value. You're in the space of trying to build better batteries, build better assets, perform some form of analytics on the data you receive. You're not in the business of device management. You're not in the business of managing SIM data plans. We are. So, you know, when you say, I want to do IoT, you're not trying to say, I want to become an expert in wireless networking, and I want to become an expert in device management. You're saying, I want to add value to my products that requires this connectivity. And this is why, you know, companies like us exist, and why One Edge is so powerful, because it really helps bring solutions to a production quality faster. And I liken it to, you know, stories around the house in this whole COVID environment we're in. I took it upon myself to switch a bunch of my light switches for smart switches. Am I an electrician? No. Am I an engineer? Yes. For some reason, every time I walk by those switches, I wonder if one of them is going to burn my house down. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I should do it. And, you know, really that little microcosm is the exact same as this space we're in with IoT. Trying to make sure that people can do solutions following the best practices, the best technologies, the best methodologies is why One Edge is an essential part of that first mile. And it doesn't matter if you have a device that can easily connect. If you have a dumb device, you can always retrofit it. If you have a very complex device, we have devices that send one message a day. We have devices that send 50 messages per second. There's no right answer in IoT. Same goes on the cloud. We have many customers whose simple story is, when this alarm goes off in my device, I need to open up a ticket in my my ticketing system so that we can go and respond proactively to the customer. And then we have other customers who say, I'm trying to feed all this near real-time data into a big data lake that's feeding an analytics engine and trying to come out with real-time predictive analytics of what our field of hundreds of thousands of devices is doing right now. So, you know, IoT can be as simple or as complicated as you need it. And no matter what, this connectivity layer is essential, but it doesn't have to be the focus. So with that, I hope I kind of wrapped up the story on the first mile and where Telit fits, and now hopefully we can get to some questions.
Yeah, Jim, thanks a lot for that. So we do have time for questions, and we've received some great comments and questions so far. There is still time to ask questions, so just use the box underneath the slide presentation, and we'll do our best to cover it. Sticking with you, Jim, we've had a question in. Could you please provide suggestions and comments to handle cloud interoperability between the top 3 cloud providers, Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google GCP?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I found the use of these cloud systems is one of the next holy wars. Either everybody comes in with their preferred technology, and the key when we look at it is we support all of them. We have tight integration with GCP, with AWS, with Azure. We found that customers have already predetermined what cloud provider they're using when they start a project. If your company has a strategy all revolving around Azure, you're not going to go and deploy a small little your IoT service in AWS. You're going to keep building in Azure. If you have a large infrastructure in AWS, likewise, you're not going to move to Azure. I know Telit's infrastructure for IoT is built on AWS, and every time we have the discussion about moving, we have such a strong investment in that technology stack. Our interest in migrating is just very, very small. So the key for interoperability is trying to make sure you're flexible and you understand that different business systems serve different roles. So we also are very, very much acknowledge that you sometimes have to feed more than one infrastructure. We have a customer where we feed their big data analytics into AWS. We also feed all their real-time trouble ticketing directly into an SAP system. So I think it is extremely important to have that interoperability and acknowledge that you will have to integrate with many different systems, and it's never very clean.
Great. Martino, coming to you. How do you reduce clients' expectations that an IoT POC should be able to scale to production levels after one attempt that is only marginally successful?
Well, that's an interesting question because I know the feeling, and we know from experience this challenge in the sense that customers are frequently coming to us and asking for support after they have not been successful with the first cycle of their solution. And for example, they tried to build from scratch a solution in-house. But I think that after this frustration, I think we should not have a defensive approach. The approach should be more about how can we exceed customers' expectations and increase their confidence, showing them how to use the tools and how using these proper tools and technologies can help them implement fast and securely their solutions. So at the same time, we must also be clear with our customers, and here I'm going back to some of the considerations made by Robin earlier. So a successful project must have clear goals set and clear KPIs. So we were talking about, the business aims that are not well thought out, the unclear business objectives, or the fact that some customers are doing IoT just because they want to try. So once these goals are clearly defined, both on the technical and the business perspective, so ROI, business process integration, the service targets. Once all those goals are correctly set, we can help the customer correctly define the use case, architect the implementation, and overcome most of the technical challenges, whether they They are looking for a fast POC or a small deployment or a deployment that needs to scale up pretty fast because the tools and the methodology is the same.
Great. And one for Robin. What are the challenges you see with wireless connectivity?
Sorry, I wasn't expecting that. The challenges with wireless connectivity are really being able to plan it properly. So we talked about things like coverage, making sure that you have the right coverage, making sure you have the sort of reliability that you're looking for the application, the bandwidth, making sure that the bandwidth that you need is going to be available using the type of connectivity that you're using, that you have the right latency, that you're not delaying things and delaying data getting through. One of the most important ones is scalability. So you might have, for a proof of concept, you might well have the scalability right, but then when you grow it from 10 devices to 1,000 or 10,000 devices, the scalability issues are much greater, and it may be that you need to replan what you've been doing. And the actual platform that you use, the solution that you use for a production type of solution is very different to a proof of concept. So there's all sorts of issues around those as well. So yeah, those are some of the significant technical challenges, and it just means that connectivity can't be taken lightly, and particularly wireless connectivity, because there are several different forms of wireless connectivity, even when you just consider cellular. So you've got low bit rate, you've got high bit rate, and different requirements in between, battery requirements, and so forth. And what we found in some of the research that we did is that people just are blindsided by it all. They've been given this idea that connectivity is pretty simple, that it's all been sorted out, and that so long as you've sorted out the other aspects of the project, that you've got your platform and you've got your solution and stuff like that, that it's all going to work. Yet when we went out to talk to people in the field about their experiences, we came across two particular projects which are written up actually in the report, where the connectivity issues were such that the projects failed. So although they'd spent a lot of money on getting their platforms right, getting their infrastructure right, logistics right, and so forth, they ignored the crucial aspect of connectivity, and all of that investment was effectively wasted, and they had to cancel the project. And that happened with two different projects in two different sectors. So just bear in mind that connectivity can be very important to work on, and wireless connectivity is much more complicated than fixed.
Right, yeah. And one for Maurice, we're running out of time. What is the average charging time of these batteries?
Well, the right answer is always it depends, but the modules can be charged between, let's say, 2 and 4 hours.
Right. Back to Martino. In many complex solutions like IoT, architects have selected to go to multiple vendors, each supposedly excelling in their core area. Why do you think IoT is different and benefits from all elements coming integrated from a vendor?
Oh, this is a recurring question, and okay. Let's try to keep it short, considering the time constraints. But this depends on many aspects, including the skills and the level of experience of the customer and the capacity of producing a substantial effort for the implementation of a project and the testing. I think that the approach we have taken at Telit is pretty flexible, since most of the important components are standard-based. I mentioned earlier, for example, the lightweight M2M. And all these components are naturally designed to be integrated in an ecosystem of solutions. So, for example, when it comes to natively integrate with a number of IT partners or connectivity providers, but customer can always choose which component to use, but integration is key when we aim at simplifying and making more robust functions such as security, the installation process, the remote management, or some other value-add features and software components that can be remotely managed by the platform.
And one more for you, Martino. Regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you think IoT services can help people, and which IoT services will be on hold meanwhile COVID-19 will be under control?
I think it's still difficult to evaluate the impact on the industry. Companies are still trying to understand and reviewing their plans for short and mid-term. Of course, we have to expect some delays and slowdown on the short term. For example, some consumer sector might be involved. But IoT can also be the engine for the economic growth when this crisis will pass. For sure, it will pass. And also supporting some of the changes that will affect our lives. But we are already seeing many startups that are already helping fight the coronavirus and improve people's life in such challenging times. I've seen some use cases, for example, on the remote monitoring and home care, which is a strategy that is already being implemented in many countries that allows to discriminate between severe and less severe cases and relieve pressures on the hospitals. On the prevention aspects, we've been discussing about these apps that will help people know whether they are at risk because they have been close to an outbreak area. And also the diagnostic and decision support, being able to monitor the situation of a patient, but also of a group of people or geographic regions, and act quickly with containment or medical support is already crucial. So, despite the difficult times, still lots of opportunities that can be enabled by IoT technology.
That seems like a great place to wrap up. Thank you very much for taking part in today's webinar. It was a great presentation and we've had some good interaction with the viewers too. A replay will be sent out via email to all registrants, so if you missed any of the content, you'll be able to answer your question. Don't worry, we'll look at getting back to you via email. Thanks again to all our speakers and to the audience for taking part. We will see you again very soon. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.